I had always believed that love in my family was unconditional, that my parents' pride and support were mine as much as my sister's. But that belief, fragile as it was, shattered in the coldest way imaginable. It began with small things, my achievements quietly ignored while hers were celebrated loudly, her every minor victory praised, photographed, and shared with relatives. At first, I brushed it off as coincidence, or perhaps my imagination. But over time, the pattern became undeniable. I was fading from their world, while she was being showered with everything I had ever wanted. It wasn't just gifts or opportunities, it was the look in their eyes when she entered the room, the way their smiles brightened for her, the way their voices softened when they spoke to her. I felt like a shadow in my own home, a ghost who existed but no longer mattered. I tried to tell myself that love isn't a finite resource, that their devotion to her didn't mean they loved me less, but my heart knew the truth. The breaking point came one evening when I overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. My father's voice, usually calm and steady, sounded uncharacteristically cold. "We need to give everything to her," he said. "Education, savings, opportunities, she deserves it more than." His words cut me deep, though he never finished the sentence. I didn't need him to. I understood perfectly. Years of my own sacrifices, my successes, my loyalty, all dismissed. All erased. My mother's voice, soft and resigned, echoed in agreement. "She's our priority. She'll need it. She's the one who's meant to carry the family forward." I froze in the hallway, my chest tightening. I wanted to scream, to confront them, to demand, "What about me?" But the words wouldn't come. I realized then that nothing I had done, nothing I had achieved mattered. My life, my dreams, my heart, they were irrelevant to the people who had raised me. The following morning, my phone buzzed. A simple, devastating message, "We're done," from my father. No explanation, no softening, no warmth. Just the text that cut through my entire world. I stared at it, my hands trembling. Was this really happening? Was this my life now? Reduced to a brief, emotionless sentence. For a moment, I felt like my entire existence had been invalidated in 3 words. I wandered through the house like a ghost, watching my sister laugh with them, oblivious to the storm she had helped create. The irony was unbearable. She had everything I had ever wanted, yet she didn't even know the magnitude of the power she held over me. My anger simmered beneath the surface, a slow, steady burn that refused to be ignored. That night, alone in my room, I let myself finally cry. For the years of unacknowledged effort, for the love I had given freely, only to be discarded, for the cruel unfairness of a world where my own blood had chosen to erase me. But amid the tears, a new feeling began to take root, a quiet, burning determination. I wouldn't vanish completely. I wouldn't let them win by breaking me. If they had decided to give everything to her, then I would find a way to take back what was mine, not with anger or shouting, but with patience, cunning, and resolve. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge begins not with fire, but with a quiet, calculated plan. After that devastating text from my father, the house felt like a stranger's home. Every corner whispered reminders of my exclusion. Every photograph a testament to the love that had been given to someone else. I avoided my parents whenever possible, slipping through rooms like a shadow, invisible and ignored. My sister, oblivious to my pain, continued to bask in the warmth of their attention, laughing freely, asking for favors, claiming privileges I had once thought were mine. The injustice gnawed at me, a slow, insidious hunger that refused to be quelled. At first, I tried to confront them carefully, politely, hoping to reach the rational part of their hearts. I reminded them of my achievements, my sacrifices, the countless nights I had stayed up to study or work, the times I had supported the family when they struggled. I expected, or maybe hoped, for acknowledgement, for some sign that they still saw me. But their responses were polite, distant, dismissive. My father would sigh, glance away, and mumble something about responsibilities and fairness, while my mother would pat my shoulder lightly, her eyes apologetic but firm. Their silence spoke louder than words they had chosen. I was no longer part of the equation. I retreated to my room and let the anger consume me. It wasn't the fiery, explosive anger of a moment. It was a slow, deliberate burn that settled into my bones. I replayed every memory where I had been overlooked, every smile my sister received that should have been mine, every word of praise, every gift, every opportunity. The unfairness of it all became a mirror reflecting their favoritism, their blind devotion to someone undeserving of their unwavering attention. It was in that quiet, lonesome space that a new clarity emerged. The thought that had once seemed impossible began to crystallize: revenge. But not the impulsive, reckless kind that might destroy me along with them. No, this would be different. This would be precise, careful, and inevitable. My plan wouldn't come from hate alone. It would come from strategy, from patience, from letting their own choices lead to their downfall. I began observing my sister more closely, noticing the cracks beneath her carefully curated perfection. She was clever, yes, but arrogant and reckless. She relied on their constant protection, never learning the lessons of failure or accountability. Her achievements were fragile, dependent on their guidance, their constant approval, and slowly I realized I could exploit that. Not by striking openly, but by planting seeds, nudging the pieces of this fragile house of cards until it toppled on its own. Meanwhile, I focused on myself quietly. I rebuilt the parts of me that had been neglected, my ambitions, my skills, my networks. I started reconnecting with friends and mentors I had ignored in the past, people who valued me for what I truly could offer. My anger became fuel, my heartbreak became resolve. I would rise, stronger and smarter than they ever imagined, while their chosen favorite stumbled under the weight of their favoritism. Late at night, I would lie awake imagining the day when everything shifted. I saw my sister's smug expressions falter, my parents' eyes widening in disbelief, and most importantly, I saw myself standing tall, unshaken, finally free from the invisible chains of their bias. The thought was intoxicating, sweet in a way that pain alone never could be. The chapter closes not with action, but with a silent vow: tomorrow everything begins. And when it does, they will realize too late that the child they ignored has become unstoppable. The first step of revenge was patience. I learned to move quietly, like water carving a stone, leaving no trace of my intentions while everything around me subtly shifted. I watched my sister stumble over small things, mismanaged deadlines, overlooked commitments, and minor embarrassments that she would have never admitted to anyone else. I never intervened. I let life do the work, gently guiding the consequences toward her. My parents began to notice. At first, it was small, almost imperceptible. My father's frown lingered a little longer when he realized she had forgotten another responsibility. My mother's voice, once so sure, now trembled slightly when she tried to cover for her. They had built her up on a pedestal, but suddenly the cracks in that foundation were impossible to ignore. Each failure, each misstep, was magnified in their eyes, and their shock gave me a quiet satisfaction I could hardly admit to myself. Meanwhile, I rebuilt my own life with meticulous care. I reconnected with friends and colleagues who had once admired my abilities. I immersed myself in work, in study, in opportunities they had long denied me, not out of spite, but out of necessity. I polished my skills, honed my intellect, and strengthened my network. Every step I took made me stronger, more confident, and more prepared to claim what I had been denied. The irony was delicious. While my sister relied on the crutch of their favoritism, I stood on the solid ground of my own effort, independent and unstoppable. I also learned to wield subtle manipulation. I offered advice to my sister in a tone of harmless sisterly concern, knowing she would take it as patronizing guidance rather than a trap. She followed my suggestions blindly, unaware that each choice, each action, brought her closer to embarrassment or failure. I did not gloat. I simply watched and waited. The thrill was not in her fall, but in the realization that my patience, my planning, and my quiet determination were now invisible forces shaping reality around me. My parents, meanwhile, began to sense the shift. They noticed my growing confidence, the respect I commanded from others, and the subtle distance I maintained from them. Unlike my sister, I did not need constant approval. I had become someone they could no longer control, someone whose worth was self-evident. Their favorites, nurtured and protected, began to crumble under the weight of their own flaws, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. One evening, my father sent another text. "We need to talk." I smiled quietly, reading his words with a calm I had never possessed before. I did not rush to reply. I let the moment linger, savoring the slow reversal of fortune. The tables were turning, and for the first time in years, I felt a serene power coursing through me. I was no longer the ignored child, the shadow in their home. I was the architect of change, quietly guiding the destiny of everyone around me. And the sweetest part, they had no idea. Revenge was never about destruction. It was about transformation. My sister's world, built on favoritism and blind support, was beginning to unravel. My parents' pride, once unwavering, was now tinged with doubt. And I, who had been discarded, silenced, and overlooked, was rising, untouchable, unstoppable, and ready to claim the life that was always meant for me. By the end of the chapter, the tension reaches its peak. My revenge is in motion, invisible yet inevitable, setting the stage for the ultimate reckoning. The game has begun, and every piece is moving exactly as I planned. The house felt different now. Tension clung to the walls like dust, invisible but palpable. My sister, once radiant with the confidence of favoritism, now moved through rooms with a careful, anxious step. The small cracks in her life had grown into fissures, failed projects, social embarrassments, and subtle betrayals by people she had thought were allies. And my parents, they could no longer ignore it. Their faces, once confident and serene, now bore lines of worry and disbelief, as though realizing too late that their choices had consequences beyond their imagination. I watched it all unfold with a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Revenge had never been about cruelty. It was about justice in the only way I could deliver it. Every misstep of my sister's, every faltering smile, every faltering plan she had made, all of it was a reflection of the favoritism they had lavished upon her. And I had been the patient observer, the quiet force behind the scenes, letting life reveal the truth they had refused to see. The first confrontation came unexpectedly. My father called me into the study, his hands trembling slightly as he closed the door behind me. "We need to talk seriously," he said, his voice unsteady for the first time in years. I nodded, calm, composed, letting the weight of my presence speak louder than words. We never realized how much he began, but faltered, unsure how to finish. I could see the guilt etched in his eyes, the realization that their blind devotion to my sister had blindsided them to everything I had endured. "I understand now," I said softly, letting my voice carry no malice, only clarity. "I know why you did what you thought was best, but your decisions, they've consequences, and those consequences are here." My mother appeared at the doorway, her eyes wide, her hands twisting nervously. She opened her mouth, but no words came. My sister, sensing the shift, entered behind her, her face pale, realizing for the first time that the pedestal she had occupied was crumbling beneath her. I took a deep breath. "You wanted to give everything to her," I said, gesturing toward my sister. "You did, but life doesn't reward favoritism. It rewards effort, consistency, and integrity, and those are things I've built quietly while you were busy choosing who mattered most. Now you can't see the results for yourselves." The room was silent, the weight of my words sinking in. My sister's confident smirk had vanished. My parents' eyes were heavy with recognition. This wasn't just a moment of embarrassment. It was a reckoning. I didn't need to shout, didn't need to demand apologies. My presence, calm and resolute, carried the truth. I had risen above betrayal, outgrown favoritism, and claimed what was rightfully mine. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and as I walked out of that room, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: liberation. The anger, the heartbreak, the years of being ignored. All of it had transformed into strength. My parents had learned their lesson. My sister had faced her reckoning, and I had emerged untouchable, unbroken, unstoppable. Later that evening, alone in my room, I allowed myself a quiet smile. Revenge, I realized, was not about destruction. It was about reclamation. I hadn't just taken back what was mine. I had become someone they could never ignore, someone they could never control. I didn't just survive their betrayal. I whispered to the empty room I outgrew it, and in doing so, I finally became unstoppable. The house was still, the storm had passed, and for the first time, I felt truly at peace.